So if you've been following basically what's been going on across the country, there are massive job losses that have been going on, primarily due to the pandemic and the way that politicians have been treating the pandemic. I've released several videos talking about how, because of Governor Newsom in California and the way he's choosing to enact laws, put in policies to keep certain parts of his state shut down. And again, California is the fifth largest economy in the entire world, and it is coming to a crashing halt, primarily due to the way Governor Newsom is running his state. Similarly, here in New York, right? I've been here living in Manhattan for the past 8 years, and currently in Manhattan, we have a 16% unemployment rate. The national average is 8.4. In the Bronx, it's 25%. In Brooklyn, it's 21%. Out in Queens, it's like 19.9, 20%. Have some of the largest amounts of job losses in the country, in the entire country. New York State has some of the biggest job losses that have been going on, and it's only going to get worse, especially because Cuomo here is basically adopting a lot of the type of policies that Governor Newsom is utilizing in his own state, to the detriment of the state. But one thing that I did want to talk about was, especially today, we see a lot of female independence, I don't need no man, etc. We can do everything that they can do sort of mentality among women. And so this is a very good article talking about, from the labor union, talking about public sector job loss is coming and women will be hit hardest. Women have already lost more than 800,000 public sector jobs, and that number could grow as state and local governments face budget shortfalls, right? So typically, when you think about, even from my perspective, when you're in a bad situation financially, right? Maybe you lost your job, maybe you're in the middle of going to school and your finances are kind of tight. You don't have those dollars basically to frivolously spend on stuff that really isn't that important, that isn't that necessary. And so typically when you see job losses, typically what states and what businesses do, but mostly businesses do this much quicker than the state does, because the state just basically takes money from you. Whereas from a business perspective, as a business, I have to go out and earn those dollars. I have to provide a service or sell a product. And then out of that revenue, I have to be able to pay bills, to pay my employees, to pay my overhead. And if there is anything left, then I may cut myself a check, or I may not. I may choose to put that money back in. But when things are tight, typically people learn to cut out the fat, or as they say, tighten your belt. And so it's very telling when we see that within the country, there are already some 800,000 women who have been cut. So it really shows that there's a lot of excess fat within, and this is primarily within public sector. That means your taxes, right? So many of these, all these individuals, I should say, are being paid out of your taxes. And realistically speaking, in terms of keeping the country rolling, in terms of providing services, in terms of, and like I said, keeping the wheels moving forward in terms of what is necessary, right? We talk about the essential jobs and jobs that are not so essential. And what many women are finding out today is that, realistically speaking, most of their jobs are not essential, especially when it comes to the public sector, right? The public sector is your taxes. And of course, for married couples, this is great. This is how you see more money in your check that goes to your household. But of course, there are many single women, there are many single mothers, and of course, they are highly dependent upon the state, in essence, who become the father, who become the man of the house. In essence, the state becomes the man of the house. And of course, when the state runs out of money because individuals like you or your family members have lost their job because of the way that politicians are running your state, because of the pandemic, because of the fear that has been placed within many of the different industries, like for example, airlines, luxury cruise lines, bars, restaurants, etc. So now a lot of these individuals lose their job. And of course, this is all because of the fear mongering that has been going on with the virus. But as a result of all that fear mongering, we see that a lot of women have lost their jobs. Women today, especially because of what's going on, and for the most part during all types of crises, typically are the ones who are mostly hardest hit: single women and of course single mothers. Even though the narrative is that they can have it all, that they can do it all, realistically speaking, the statistics show otherwise. Especially nowadays, women in the current, basically in the current climate, are being the hardest hit. Primarily, single moms are the ones who are facing these many obstacles, financially speaking. Guess you couldn't have it all. Even though that is what is often told to many of these young women, that they can go out there and do it all, typically it's when the economy is doing really well, where you have the bulk of the men that are out there working and basically keeping things moving forward. When that stops, so do all those luxury jobs, all those restaurant jobs, all those jobs around retail, all those makeup jobs. Jobs really that aren't essential. For example, like many of the science or the technology, engineering jobs revolving around math. When many of those jobs get halted, that puts all of these other non-essential jobs that typically women hold also on hold. And that's just a reality. If more individuals, of course, would lean that way, the country would actually be in a better place, and more than likely, so would your household. It's typically how financial wealth, in terms of building wealth from generation to generation, gets lost, where there isn't a man in the home, there isn't a man to teach his children all the things that he's learned. I've learned a lot growing up and teaching myself and learning from others about financial wealth, building businesses, and investing. And of course, that's all necessary information basically to pass on to your children, whether you have sons or whether you have daughters, so that they gain the benefit of all that knowledge that you've accumulated. Of course, when there's a separation between husband and wife within the home, then also goes a lot of that ability to teaching, because teaching doesn't come every other weekend when you're divorced, because typically most women get access to the children. So it's very hard to inculcate all that knowledge just in the span of every other weekend, especially because during the other time period, they're with the woman, and maybe she's not busy spending time teaching them those things, especially if she's out there also having to work in probably one of these public sector unnecessary jobs that are bleeding income from taxpayers like you. I thought this was really interesting. If you're wondering, because I've reading quite a few articles, I had a little bit of downtime while I was at work, had a little bit of a slower night than usual. I had the opportunity to check out what's going on economically within the country, and of course in the state here of New York. The difference between the amount of jobs that were let go from the female, we can see it here. It's 800,000. Will continue to grow. The difference is in terms of men, it was only 78,000. So only 10%, right? So for every 10 jobs that women had in the public sector, only one man was let go by comparison.